What can we expect in the coming decades? The prospects of technology appeal to people's deepest fears as well as to their highest hopes. A rational debate about the future seems no longer possible. In fact, such discussion, by definition, is beyond our human capacities. Aren't we still too human to be prepared for becoming transhuman?
It is an enormous privilege to be alive right now and to be a part of this movement, and it's a very difficult time. I don't deny that at all. I look at it more as a birth pain, that here is this change that's occurring and we're coming down the birth canal. And it's a difficult process, but it's a birth that is occurring. It's not a death. And I think that when future humans look back on this era from several hundred years in the future, they will not remember this time as one when we squandered the resources of the planet, when we destroyed our planet, essentially. They'll look at this as an extraordinary moment in time when we developed the basic technologies, the basis for their societies. We developed genetic engineering, the ability to basically rework our own genetic blueprint, which is something unprecedented. It's never happened in 3.5 billion years of history. We began to move out into space. For 3.5 billion years, all of life has been constrained to this thin film on the surface of the planet. And now, quite suddenly, in just an instant in time, we're moving out towards the universe. And the third thing that has occurred in our era is artificial intelligence, computers. Suddenly, non-living material is beginning to achieve a level of complexity that rivals that of life itself. So these are three things that are absolutely unprecedented in the history of life, and they're occurring now. And is it any surprise that this is something that is jarring and shaking up the environment and causing extinctions? This is going to provide the basis, not just for the next 100 years, but for thousands of years, tens of thousands, if not millions of years.
dancing on the floor. Close those eyes, I got a nice surprise for you. Sweet child, can't close those eyes, never say goodbye, never say goodbye. take away all the wrong. I could sing you, breathe, learn you for days and days and days to come. For days and days and days to days and days and days to go.
Torus is like the breath of the universe. It's the form that the flow of energy takes at every scale of existence. But there's also an underlying structure in how the flow fits together, sort of like a skeleton. It's called the vector equilibrium, a term coined by one of the 20th century's greatest thinkers, Buckminster Fuller. Inspired by Fuller's visionary work, I spent decades researching the dynamics of the vector equilibrium and the torus. I became so excited by the potential of the toroidal energy form that in 1997 I co-founded a multidisciplinary think tank called the Sequoia Symposium to study the pattern and explore its applications. Our collected research convinced me that the torus and the vector equilibrium are primary patterns, fundamental to the creation of the universe at all scales. At the Sequoia Symposium gatherings, I learned of inventors who claimed they were using the torus dynamic as the basis for devices that generated energy without combustion. This revolutionary development, accessing what's sometimes called zero point or radiant or free energy, is now being called most simply new energy technology. Given that so much of the suffering in our world is the result of lack of access to energy, I realized that free, unlimited, clean energy would be one of the greatest breakthroughs in history. It could not just improve, but actually transform the quality of life on this planet. So I began to wonder who else knew about this pattern, or about this powerful potential energy source.
I showed in the scaling law that if you take all of the objects in the universe and you plot their radius against their frequency, okay, these objects all fall on a straight line across the graph, okay? All of these objects obeying the Karl-Schwarzschild condition of a black hole. Okay? Let me explain this, what it means. Because it looks complex, but it's not that complex. This is the universal scale, our universe. We have an approximate idea of its radius if it's a closed universe. If you look at that, the mass inside the universe exceeds the escape velocity of light. That means if you shine a light in one direction, you know how Einstein discovered that the electromagnetic field can get bent by the gravitational forces, the curvature of space-time? That light will bend around one star, bend around the other star, bend around the other star, bend around the other star, and come right back. It will not escape our universe because there's too much mass in it. That means we live inside a black hole. Let me reiterate that. We live inside a black hole. That's why when you look up in the sky at night, it's black. Because light is contracting in the vacuum towards singularity. larger cluster which is orbiting the universe, which is a larger spiral, and that universe is orbiting a multiverse, a larger universe, and a larger universe, and the larger universe to infinity, then is anything moving? That was a good question. That's where the fractals become a really good thing to have. Because in an infinite fractal of rotation, in an infinite fractal, how do you define the center? Every point is the center. You are the center of the universe, or observing the universe from your very own center. Wherever you pick a point of observation in the fractal, that point becomes the center from which you're observing the universe. That point becomes stillness. Why stillness? Because in that point now, all of the spins of the universe cancel out. So you guys see where I'm going? See, this is the concept that I'm bringing forward. Everything is centered by singularity. All of the spin canceling out in each point creates stillness. It's all spin cancelling in the middle of all things, creating stillness. From that point of stillness, everything orbits around it. When you know that, then when you look at the galaxy, you find the same dynamics. Right? This is a galaxy. This is a huge fractal level larger than a hurricane. A hurricane is a few hundred miles across. A galaxy is a few thousand light years across. Okay? And it has billions of stars in it. What's at the center of a galaxy? An immense black hole. The point of stillness, singularity. The point where all spin cancel, creating non-movement, singularity. Yes, the black hole is orbiting, but that's the outside. If you go in towards singularity, further you go, stiller it's gonna get, colder it's gonna get. When I showed this to physicists almost 12 years ago, I predicted from this theory that the center of all galaxies were going to generate black holes. That all galactic center had a black hole at the center. I got kicked out of physics conference for saying things like that. Well, recently, this data appeared. The largest Hubble the latest Hubble observations are presenting a cosmological challenge as astronomers uncover supermassive black hole at the heart of every galaxy they examine. That is a large prediction, you know. That is not trivial.
forbidden city where the sun gods reside, and where you find at the entrance the food dogs, the guardians of the knowledge. They guard the knowledge under their paw.
The same geometry of 64 energy units is encoded again. I started wondering, is it just a coincidence that the exact same design appears in significant places on two different continents? But then Nassim showed me that this geometry of 64 is encoded time and again in cultures across the centuries and from all over the world. The Hebrew Kabbalistic tree of life creates the same structure we just saw, with the vector equilibrium again embedded at every level. The ancient Chinese system of wisdom called the I Ching is based on 64 hexagrams, symbols with 6 lines in a set, some continuous, some broken. These can be put together as the 6 edges of a tetrahedron, and together would form the 64 tetrahedron crystal. Shows up in modern scientific research. The double helix has an alphabet of 64 codons that are used to encode our human DNA.
fundamental structure of space. I knew, I was definitely saying, now realize, you guys, if we truly have the fundamental structure of creation, then technology that's based on this information is going to tap directly into an infinite potential of energy, infinite potential of gravity, infinite potential of rejuvenation, regeneration, and so on. You're talking serious change in our way of doing technology.
Showed me how the Taurus has been coded by different cultures for millennia. Apparently, ancient cultures had embedded this code in the most enduring forms then possible, in stories, in icons, in alphabets, and buildings. Here we are at one of the world's oldest sacred sites, the Osirian Temple at Abydos, Egypt.
Very little writing is found in the Osirian Temple. However, there is one very significant piece of information in that temple. It is a very faint but clear and precise drawing. It's not etched into the rock, it's not carved, it's burned into the atomic structure of the rock in some extraordinary way.
Nassim has decoded the Osirian symbol in 3 dimensions. Since our world is not two-dimensional, it makes sense that codes relaying information about our world also wouldn't be limited to flat designs. His three-dimensional version of the Osirian symbol starts with the vector equilibrium, a perfectly balanced force field with 12 equal energy lines radiating out. They stabilize its center like the 12 spokes of a wheel. The primary pattern of balanced energy flow around this structure is the torus. Here we expand to the next larger scale with a total of 64 pyramids called tetrahedra. If we then put spheres in representing the toroidal energy field surrounding each of the pyramids, and then we drop away the pyramids, we end up with a matrix that is, amazingly, an exact overlay for the Osirian icon, a three-dimensional model of the same pattern that was burned into the rock wall of the Egyptian temple thousands of years ago.
That if this is true, every one of your atoms, every one of your cells has infinite potentiality, has infinite connectivity to everything else. That each one of your atoms is a mini black hole. Because if there's infinite amount of particles in it that can be divided, that means it has infinite mass.
That the information that is in the space divides in very specific scales, and those scales makes up all of our reality, and that we're part of those scales. You guys are following this? Instead of matter being some kind of entity that comes out of nowhere, matter is just the result of the division of the structure of space itself. And you are interacting with that structure every day, every second, every billionth of a second. We know that all the electrons and positrons in your atoms are going appear, disappear, appear, disappear, appear, disappear in the vacuum. Every time the electron comes out, it's learning about your experience and then feeding it back to the vacuum, and learning about your experience and feeding it back to the vacuum. You are informing the universe. You are informing the universe about your specific point of view on the whole thing. And I can demonstrate that mathematically. And that's why people in the spiritual world are saying you create your reality. Okay? The part that's missing in that statement is the other part of the feedback loop. A fractal is a feedback. The other part of the feedback loop is that reality is creating you. The vacuum is defining your existence.
Can you stay up for the weekend and blame God for looking too old? Can you find all that you stand for has been replaced with mountains of gold? You can train yourself to notice, to feel pain and swallow fear. But can you stay up for the weekend till next year? God, I can't do this anymore.
This is a water droplet that you're going to see, and in this water droplet, a frequency is being pumped into this water droplet. As the frequency is mirrored in the droplet, you'll actually see the geometric patterns in that droplet. Now what's happening, and the reason that this is so significant, is because we're going to do a frequency sweep. We're going to go from low frequencies to higher frequencies. And what you'll find is this. You'll see that in the lower frequencies, the patterns are less complex. And in the higher frequency, the patterns are more complex. So we're going through a sweep from lower to higher frequency. I'm sharing this with you now because Earth is essentially going through a frequency sweep. Our fundamental pulse, our base pulse that has hovered around 7.8 cycles per second, now is changing. Again, there's a lot of controversy about what the change is, and we're witnessing the change. As we go through our planetary shift of this pulse, patterns of energy must change to respond to that, just as patterns of energy in this water are changing to respond to this pulse. And we'll begin with simply the concentric patterns in the water as the frequency begins. Every once in a while, we'll reach a key threshold resonance, such as that moment right there. And in that key threshold resonance, the entire pattern morphed into a more complex expression of itself, simply because the frequency changed. Now watch what happens. The frequency is still increasing. And watch what happens. As we reach another key threshold resonance, this entire pattern will morph into a beautifully and more complex pattern of itself. Again, and again. Look at this pattern right here. Look what you're seeing right here. Look at the beautiful geometry. Here's a perfect cube. There's a perfect tetrahedron, a star tetrahedron. 2 dimensions, we've got the octahedron. very powerful images of sacred geometry held in place simply because we've achieved the vibratory pattern that allows that, this water drop. And as the vibration increases, these patterns will become more and more complex.
Here's the cell dividing, generating perfect tetrahedron. You know, T cells are fundamental cells until it gets to 64, and then at 64, then it starts to make brain cells, heart cells, liver cells, and all sorts of other cells. So you all went through this very specific geometry to get here. You are an extension of space looking back at itself. That's the feedback of reality. That's what generates reality. You, the universe, experiencing itself, learning about itself. And that feedback between the internal and the external and the internal and the external is what drives the dynamics of all of the forces of the universe, which reduces in this view to only two forces, gravity and electromagnetic. So now you can see that if you're in a universe that's a black hole, the smaller black hole in that universe, you're on the outside of, so they look like white holes. They radiate. You see the radiating side of the event horizon. It looks like a star, it looks like a planet, it looks like an atom, it looks like a subatomic particle. You guys see that? The white hole and the black hole are not two different objects. They're inside each other. And it's a feed between the gravitational field and the electromagnetic field. Radiation generates curvature, and that generates an open feedback. And what's an open feedback? It's a fractal. That's exactly what a fractal is. Good evidence that the universe is a fractal. Nobody seems to notice, but we all come out of other people. You know? That is a pretty good evidence of fractals.
Space inside the atom is 99.99999%. So maybe we should pay attention to the largest percentage instead of the smallest percentage. We spend a lot of time paying attention to the 0.0000001% that we call matter, and we spend very little time paying attention and trying to understand the 99.9999999% of the space. So maybe instead of matter defining the space, maybe it's space that defines matter.
there's no way out. I'm up against the wall. I cannot hide, I've lost my pride. I'm out on my own. So with my heart out on my sleeve, I face the world. I face the world. I face the world.